Welcome back to the Philosophy Lab, where today we are going to perform surgery on language to find out what really exists and what is just a figment of our grammar. We are tackling one of the most famous and difficult concepts in all of analytic philosophy, known as ontological commitment. This is from section 49 of Word and Object by the legendary W.V.O. Quine. The question we are asking is simple yet devastating. When you speak, do you realize what you are claiming exists in the universe? We have already talked about why people love physical objects like rocks and tables, because they can kick them and see them. But today, we have to talk about the strange addiction some philosophers and even regular people have to abstract objects. I am talking about attributes, properties, and meanings. Why do we feel the need to say that redness exists over and above the red apple? Quine suggests that there is a false predilection, a bias that leads us astray. One reason we favor physical objects is their proximity to stimulation. We see the apple, and we believe in the apple. The mistake happens when we try to apply this same logic to the features of the apple. If attributes are broadly analogous to sense qualities, we might feel a continuity there. We think that, just as the apple causes a sensation in our eye, the redness must be a thing that causes a sensation in our mind. We treat attributes as if they are recurrent characters in a private mental show. Quine thinks this is nonsense. To project non-sensory attributes purely on the analogy of sense qualities betrays a lazy attitude toward psychology. It ignores the actual mechanisms of behavior. We do not need a ghost in the machine to explain why we call different things red. But there is a second, more dangerous trap. This is the linguistic trap. Some of us are carried away by the object-directed pattern of our thinking. We are obsessed with the idea that every word must be about something. Think about the sentence, "The dog is round." A person caught in this trap looks at that sentence and says, okay, dog names the dog, so round must name the roundness. They think that when a general term occurs predicatively alongside a name, the sentence is about the named object and an attribute symbolized by the general term. This leads to a crowded universe. Suddenly, you don't just have dogs, you have caninity and roundness and barkingness floating around as invisible objects. This reasoning contains a massive fallacy. It is the idea that the utility of a word counts in favor of assuming objects for it. Just because the word round is useful does not mean roundness is an object. Let's look at the mechanism of language. Typical positions for general terms are predicative. We say, X is a glint. The objects involved here are just the glints themselves, the flashes of light. When we decide to use the word glint as a general term, the effect is only that the glints count as objects. We do not need to invent glinthood or glintkind. The word glint is true of the flash of light. It is not the name of a heavenly abstract essence. But people get confused. They see that terms like round and dog are successful in science and daily life. So they assume this success supports the existence of attributes. But round and dog succeeded as general terms true of physical objects, not as names of abstract entities. The case for attributes remains open as a separate question. If you want to argue for attributes, you have to use terms like species or trait directly. You cannot just infer them from the fact that we use adjectives. Now, we get to the part that really annoys Quine. The philosophical double talkers. These are the thinkers who make light of the distinction between concrete and abstract terms. They derive a wishful vigor from a distaste for abstract objects, coupled with a taste for their systematic efficacy. Basically, they want to eat their cake and have it too. They want to use the language of abstract objects because it is useful, but they want to deny that those objects exist because they are materialists. You will find philosophers saying things like, there are concepts which, or there is something that he believes. And then, in the very next sentence, they blandly disavow that any such things as concepts or beliefs exist. When you press them on this contradiction, they say something incredibly slippery. They say, well, abstract objects do not exist the way physical ones do. They claim there are two senses of the words. There are. They say, there are concrete objects in one sense, and there are abstract objects in another weaker sense. Quine destroys this idea. He says, there is a little difficulty and a big difficulty with this. The little difficulty is that the philosopher is still left saying that there are abstract objects in some sense. The big difficulty is that the distinction makes no sense. There is no such thing as two modes of existence. Either something is in the universe of your theory, or it is not. This double talk thrives on the vagaries of ordinary language. In ordinary speech, we say things like, Agnes has fleas, and Agnes has a headache. Grammatically, they look the same. But fleas are physical objects, and headache is a state of being. Or consider Tabby eats mice versus Ernest hunts lions. If Ernest is hunting lions, but hasn't found any yet, the lions might not even be there. Ordinary language hides the ontological facts. So what is the solution? How do we restore law and order to our view of reality? The answer is the canonical notation of quantification. This is the famous Quinean formula. To be is to be the value of a bound variable. Insofar as we adhere to this notation, the objects we admit are precisely the objects we allow our variables to refer to. When we write the symbol x, which means there exists an x, such that we are making a commitment. We are saying that x is a real thing in our universe. The quantifiers are encapsulations of the unequivocal, referential idioms of language. To paraphrase a sentence into canonical notation is first and foremost to make its ontic content explicit. Quantification is a device for talking in general of objects. So, here is the challenge. The controversial part of philosophy often survives as the question of how to paraphrase a sentence. But this shifts the burden. We stop having futile arguments about implications, and we start issuing invitations. We invite our opponent to rewrite their theory in canonical logical notation. If they say, there are attributes that are not in space and time. We ask them to write that down using quantifiers. If they say, reference is a relation between words and meanings, we ask them to quantify over meanings. We cannot paraphrase our opponent's sentences for them because we do not know what they mean. We must ask them what canonical sentences they are prepared to offer. If they decline to play this game, the argument terminates. If a philosopher refuses to explain themselves in terms of quantification or the clear idioms of language, they are simply declining to disclose their referential intent. It is like a witness taking the Fifth Amendment in the court of reality. We saw earlier in radical translation that an alien language might not share our object positing pattern. It forces us to be honest. It clears away the fog of metaphysics and leaves us with the hard bones of reality. It is not about limiting what exists, it is about being clear about what we claim exists. So next time you say, I have an idea, ask yourself, are you committed to the existence of an entity called idea? Or are you just saying that you are thinking? The difference is everything. Thank you for diving into the deep waters of Quine with me today. Keep your variables bound and your ontology clear, and I will see you in the next video.